Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to make a different kind of video. I want to talk about myself for a little bit. I want to talk about who I am and who am I in relation to hockey and the Blackhawks, and my fandom for both. I thought that it would be cool to share a little bit of that and to get to know a little bit of Nico Talks Hockey. So I want to talk to start out with why I became a Blackhawks fan, when I became a Blackhawks fan, and why I like hockey so much in general. So I was blessed and very, very fortunate that my mom and dad, they went to take me and a couple of my siblings to go see a Chicago Wolves game back when I was like 9 years old. I think it was I think it was in 2008. And that was right when the Chicago Blackhawks were starting to rise. They'd been so bad for so long, no one took them seriously. But they just drafted, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook, and they were a team that was looking pretty good. And I think that my dad must have had heard some things. Maybe some people had told him that and we weren't interested in hockey. We weren't we weren't like a hockey family yet. But he thought that it'd be pretty cool to take me and a couple of my siblings to a Chicago Wolves game, the AHL team, and just see what what hockey's all about. Is hockey kind of cool? It looks cool. It's very fast paced, and what better? The tickets are a lot cheaper for the AHL, right? So it's a lot more accessible, which is great. And so he took us to a Wolves game, and that was pretty much it. We got to see hockey live, and it was amazing. I think one of my brothers, he got like this little stuffed husky wolf plushie, so that really helped seal the deal that hockey's cool. I loved how fast it was. I didn't really know anything about it. I was 9 years old, but I just loved the atmosphere and the look of it. And then we started watching the Blackhawks on TV. And obviously that wasn't available to so many Blackhawks fans for so many years until Rocky Wirtz came into the picture and kind of changed that for everybody. But, those Blackhawks, that core was something special, right? I'm just so lucky that I was able to grow up with that. So I was really invested come 2009. We were all really invested. We saw him go to the Final Four. They came up against the Red Wings. I remember this conversation I had with my dad where I'm like, oh, can you do it? I think they'll do it. They ended up losing. But then the next year, they go all the way. They win, and I remember the memory I have is I was so angry because the Blackhawks were leading in that game, in Game 6 against the Philadelphia Flyers in the final. And they end up, I think the Flyers, they allow the Flyers to tie it. In my mind, it's like, oh, how could the Hawks do this? They allowed them to tie it. They're going to overtime. If the Flyers score, they go to Game 7, they're going to lose it all. It was so dramatic. I remember ranting about it at the time to my parents. I was like, oh my God, these guys they're gonna let the overtime goal in and they're gonna lose Game 7. It's all as I'm saying that, Kane does the famous, quick little move, shoots it under the leg of the Flyers goalie. And I'm like, what just happened? What just happened? And then we all, we knew that he scored. And I remember my dad hugged me so hard that I thought my nose broke. It was like, it really hurt, but I was just so happy that we won. I didn't care. And so, yeah, I've been a Blackhawks fan ever since. And really, my fandom's only grown since, not just with the Blackhawks, but also hockey. I was obviously, happiest person in the world when they won again in 2013 and 15. But I haven't shied away. And honestly, I feel like I've grown even more as a fan in these years where they've been struggling. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It just hockey is just such a romantic sport. I don't know how people can't be romantic about hockey. I always say that it's like the best reality show because it's like the best TV show. You never know what you're gonna get the next day. Every new game is something new. Uh, it's unfolding as you watch. So yeah, I'd say in like my college years, I really ticked up like exponentially with my fandom of just hockey in general, the NHL, all these other teams. Um, I'd say far and away, the Blackhawks are easily my favorite team, but I got other teams I do root for every now and then. I hope they do well in the playoffs if they get there, or I hope they get out of their rebuilds or whatever. Um, and So yeah, like what makes me root for a team? If it's not the Blackhawks, what makes you root for a team? Well, I'd say that some of the other teams I root for are big underdogs. So for one of them is the Vancouver Canucks. Vancouver Canucks, obviously they were a big rival of the Hawks back in their cup winning days, but I've really come around on them. They're they've never won a cup, right? And I tend to root for teams that have never won a cup before, especially teams that have been around for a while. And so the Vancouver Canucks, they're such a great market. They've got such passionate fans. And, also being a big fan of the hockey guy. The hockey guy is one of my, I'd say, content creator inspirations. He's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this channel is because I watched him and I loved his stuff. I loved his style, his calm presence, but also very passionate. There's passion plus a sense of just like accepting things even if they don't go your way. I really like that. So, but yeah, he's a big Canucks fan, right? And I would just love if I've got some Canucks friends as well, and so I'd be rooting for them. I'd be rooting for the hockey guy, and it'd be very cool to see the Canucks have success. Just some other teams I root for, just based on their underdog mentality. A lot of them, they have never won a cup. So like the Sabres, I root for the Sabres just because I wish them well. I really do. I feel so bad for their fan base. The Senators, I'm so glad they made the playoffs this year. I was really rooting for them to come out of their seeming like perpetual rebuild. Big fan of the Wild. They've never won a cup, and they're the state of hockey. I like them as a state. It's kind of cool. They're like the Canada of America. I'm rooting for the Oilers, not because it's a team really, but just I need McDavid to get his cup. I root for McDavid. I hope he has a lot of cup success. Well, at least get one cup. So I'll be hoping he wins the cup until he does. I'm a big fan of the Kraken. Ever since they came into the league, I've got my thoughts on how they, how their front office is run and all that, but I love their look. I'm a big, I don't know, maybe this isn't like the best reason why you should root for a team, but if you look good, I want to watch you play. And so I love their logo. I love their colors, their jerseys. Actually, I'm a big fan of just like the kind of the Cthulhu-like entity. I'm wearing octopus shirt right now. I'm just a big fan of that kind of aesthetic. But yeah, I was also a big fan of the Panthers before they won the cup. I was rooting for them to win it. Some of my favorite players in the league. And one of my favorite player that's not a Blackhawk is Alexander Barkov. And so I was really rooting for him and the Panthers because they never won a cup before, last year. And I'd say that if you never won a cup before, you're an underdog, and you've got players I can root for. I'll be hoping for success for your team for sure. But like players I kind of root for, I'd say the kind of the profile of a player I like the most is someone who's very two-way, like who has a two-way game, plays a two-way game, is very defensively responsible, but also is dynamic, is so fun to watch. So Barkov, I think, fits that to a T. He's, oh my God, he's just so defensively responsible. You know, I grew up watching Hossa and Taze, so I think that definitely played into it. My favorite player growing up as a Blackhawks fan was Marian Hossa. And to think I was very upset when we signed him, because I was like, I had a conversation with my parents. I was like, no, he's like a traitor. Well, not a traitor, but like almost like he's like an enemy behind the lines because he was on the Red Wings and the Penguins. And so when he came to our team, I was like, no, I don't like it. But I became his number one fan. I love Big Hoss, and so him and Taze, Taze, Cap, and Sirius. I'll always love Taze. I'll always love Taze. So those two are very big inspirations, and players that I loved watching growing up. So yeah, I'd say that if there are any other players out there in today's NHL that fit that profile, I'm usually pretty big fans of them. I like underrated players. I just like players that don't get enough credit, whether it's the fans or it's people who vote for the awards that they should win, like Jacob Slavin. I've long been a fan of, or like someone who thinks that they should have an award for best defensive defenseman. If they've got an award, the Selke, for best defensive forward, why not for the defenseman, right? So, I'd love Jacob Slavin to one day win that award if it ever exists. But yeah, that's what goes into when I like players a lot. Yeah, I talked a little bit of this already, but who are my hockey content creator inspirations? So I'd say the biggest is the hockey guy. I really watched a lot of his videos when I was going through my first years at college, and I just I love just his personality. He's just a diehard fan for the teams he roots for. I love all the collection of jerseys he's got. That's so sick. Yeah, no, I really like the hockey guy. Love his format and his style of videos. So the reason I have a whiteboard is because I want to make videos with a whiteboard and with magnets and stickers and that kind of thing. I love lists and rankings, kind of like how he does. So I think that's so sick. Another, he's actually an Instagram creator, but M Bon Hockey. I think he's really fun. I think M Bon Hockey, a lot of his lists and rankings, I love that he does that. Part of why I made the channel in the first place is because I would make lists and rankings of certain NHL elements, just on my own free time, just because I like making it. And I thought to myself, like, well, why not make a channel? Why not share that with people? I would already, talk their ears off my family members, just saying, oh, here are my thoughts on, all these different NHL elements. So why not just share that with a larger audience? Steve Dangle, I love his passion. I think he's the funniest guy. I think he's also such a good guy. I can tell, sometimes you can be, you see a person, you want them to be a good person in real life, behind the camera. Steve Dangle's one of those guys that, and also Adam and Jesse, his podcast co-hosts, I can tell that all three of them are just so genuine, such really nice guys. Those two are definitely some big inspirations for me. I'd say there's one other content creator who's in hockey that I really I love watching, and I love the kind of content that he puts out. I've never understood how to pronounce his name. Gravite or Gravity, Grav. It goes by Grav. I love his videos on prospects and looking at prospects and prospect pools for teams. When the Hawks went into, they fired Stan Bowman, get Kyle Davidson, they commit to a rebuild. I got really into, okay, look at the prospects. How do we get this team back to the glory days, well, you got to build it through the draft, right? And I agree with that. I really do. And so I became a prospect fiend. I poured a lot of time into looking at, what makes a prospect good, what prospects do I like, what traits, of their player profile do I appreciate more than others. And so I love Grav's work on that for sure. Yeah, I got a lot. I'd say I have a deep interest in prospect analysis for every new draft now, ever since Bedard's year of 2023. By the way, me and my family were unbelievably over the moon when we got Bedard, but that's that's obvious. But yeah, so prospect analysis is one of my favorite things about hockey, especially recently. Team evaluation, evaluating where a team's at, what their identity is, where they're going to go moving forward. I think it all comes down to, I love the idea of the GM role, the general manager role. I love the idea of building a team and getting the necessary parts to build a cup-winning team. What are the ingredients? What goes into it? I love all of that. And I would say, what is my biggest dream in hockey? If we're allowed to think outside the realm of like actual possible things. If I had my dream job, I think I would want to be a general manager of a team in hockey, or obviously the general manager of the Blackhawks would be unbelievable. But so yeah, I have a lot of respect for that job and what goes into it. I love what Kyle Davidson is doing in Chicago. I have a lot of respect for him. And yeah, I really like that aspect of hockey, and I love discussing it and analyzing it for sure. Lastly, I kind of just want to talk about why I wanted to create the channel in the first place. As I said before, I wanted an outlet, I think, to talk about hockey. I love the Blackhawks, I love Chicago, and I just love the sport and the league. There are things I definitely fix about it, but it's my favorite thing, I think. And so if I'm already gonna spend so much time liking it and watching it, and I would, I'd talk and talk and talk to whoever would listen about, just the discussion about it. I love talking hockey, and so when I created the name for this channel, I thought there was nothing more authentic than to go with just me talking about hockey. And so I think that at the end of the day, it's my passion for the sport and for my favorite team that fuels me to make these videos. It's truly just one of my favorite things to do, is to talk hockey. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you that do. And I look forward to continue posting about my favorite team and my favorite sport. Thanks so much.